Is it possible to retire early as an educator? How can I build an income as an independent contractor? How can I share value and make my voice heard in a noisy world? Welcome to the Investing Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to help middle income earners learn how to invest wisely and build financial freedom, even in uncertain times. We're here to share our thoughts and opinions. For actual financial advice, please seek the services of a professional financial advisor. Today's investor is Erik Francis. Erik is an international author, presenter, and professional development provider with over 25 years of experience in education. After leaving the traditional school setting over 15 years ago, he's learned a lot about what it means to support schools, teachers, and student learning while being his own boss. You can connect with Erik on LinkedIn and at his website. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Erik, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk investing?
I am, Tim. Thanks so much. And thanks so much for having me. This is something that's really close to my heart because, many of your listeners, I was a classroom teacher. And unfortunately, we're not paid what we should be paid. And it caused some financial hardship for me. And what I hope to do today is provide some recommendations and some suggestions that will help you hopefully rethink and reconsider why you do, how you do what you do with investment and saving your money.
Thank you so much. And absolutely, all of that resonates, I think, with a lot of educators out there right now. Let's start with that kind of a theme. Let's talk about a period of adversity that you faced somewhere in your personal or financial or investing journey. What was that experience like and how did you overcome it?
Well, it's great that we are answering this question first because my family and I basically had some strong financial adversity. My wife and I were both teachers, classroom teachers. She's still in the classroom. And, as we know with education, we are not paid what we deserve and what our value is. So a lot of times for us, not only to have a quality of living, but also enjoyment, we got into some serious debt. I had debt from my first master's degree, which I really didn't ever use. It was in film and television production management from Syracuse University. And even when I went out there to start, what does it say about the film industry that I actually got paid more my first years as a teacher than I did working as an assistant to a big name producer? And we got in some serious financial debt, and a lot of it had to do with, not just, the debt we owed, but also our spending habits. We wanted to live and we wanted to enjoy life, and, these credit card companies, they say, you can transfer your funds 0%, and you get 0% the first year, and you think, "Hey, well, I'm buying everything at 0%. I'm getting 0% interest," but those fees add up. So we really had a hard time. And to be honest, one of the reasons why I made the leap from working within a systematic organization at the time I was working for the Arizona Department of Education was because I hit the glass ceiling and I was not going to go higher, but just because of, in terms of promotion, in terms of my political connections, and also the directors who were my supervisors, they weren't leaving or retiring anytime soon. So I started hearing about this idea of consulting, but that doesn't mean I dived in head first. I mean, I waded into the water. I got an anchor job that paid a little bit more, and I was able to consult on the side, which I couldn't do working at a state education agency. I couldn't consult on the side. And the whole reason why I left was not only because I wanted to try consulting, which was a foreign idea to me, but also because, again, I hit that glass ceiling. And, fortunately enough, I've been able to do this at a consistent level. Sometimes I'm successful. Sometimes, you hit the wall, but that's what it's like to be an independent contractor, your own business. But doing that got me out of debt, got my wife and I out of debt. And I did it in a very, very smart yet systematic manner that really got our debt down. I mean, our debt right now is our home, and my car payment. Pretty much that's our constant debt. I do have a revolving debt because of the travel I have to do and because of my business, but I made a mindset to say, and I learned from experience to say, when it comes to your credit cards, there's a point of no return, and you have to make sure you don't get to that point of no return because that will be the hard thing about how, you know, you will not be able to get out of that debt, or that debt will become so overwhelming to you that now it's not a wave you're riding. Now you're in the undertow, and you're just constantly drowning in it.
What a story. And I'm so excited to hear about that journey of transformation and liberation. Let's use that word, because it's no fun being in that place where the deadlines are coming. And as you say, the credit card companies are great at pulling in people who are in a tough spot. And then those 0% rates don't last for more than 6 months usually. And then the bills start to come. So you're in a much better place today. And that, I think that leads a lot of educators to ask the question, well, could I do something similar? So what's your advice to seasoned educators and leaders, perhaps in other industries too, who are considering a move away from the traditional school building, a traditional setting of work, and launching out on their own? I'm sure you've got a lot of thoughts on this.
I actually do. First thing I want to make sure I say I never give advice, because what happens with advice is that people can turn around and say, "You advised me to do this,"
Sure.
and that holds you responsible. And sometimes we can give bad advice. I mean, what worked for me may not work for other people. So I like to do what I call recommendations, or to quote the Peloton instructor Dennis Morton, "I make suggestions, you make decisions." Um, I think the big thing is, Tim, is that what so, as you introduced, lack of a better word, I'm an education consultant. I'm not crazy about that word because, there is a negative connotation to come into it where, you swoop in and you come off your ivy tower, and, you come in and give advice, and either it works or it doesn't, but pay me more, and pay me what I'm worth. And so I don't like calling myself that, but I have to say that this has evolved in education as um, a route for professionals to take, a great route for professionals to take. I compare it to how 10 to 15 years ago there was never a profession known as a social media manager, or this concept of brand ambassadors, or social media influencer. It's become this thing, but you really have to think about why you wanna do this, okay? What is your reasoning? Using the, Simon Sinek, "Start with why, find your why." What's your reasoning? What's your purpose? If you're doing this because you want more money, that's not the reason to do this. I'm gonna tell you right now, money comes and goes. One of the hard lessons we all had to learn during the pandemic is that it'll dry up. I mean, all of our phones went dead, and and we were all a lot of people talking like, "Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? All my, gigs are drying up. My work isn't drying up. My I got torpedoed. Nobody wanted professional development on depth of knowledge or questioning and inquiry. Everyone wanted PD on, how do I turn on a computer? What's this thing, called the internet? If you provided professional development on Google Classroom, you were very, very successful. And also people want a PD on how do I, not only making sure my students' social emotional wellness is good, but also my own. So that's not the reason to do this. Can you make a lot of money doing this? Absolutely. But money comes and goes, and it's a grind. And that's the thing, is that people see us on social media. You probably see me on social media. Wow, Eric went to Singapore. Wow, Eric is keynoting at this conference. Wow, Eric is working with hundreds and thousands of teachers, either at a workshop or in a district. You don't see the grind of it. You don't see the grit we need. Okay, the resilience we need to have. I mean, go read Baruti Kafili's social media if you're connected to him, how he talks about, his flight is delayed, he may not make it there on time. He gets there 2 in the morning, and you have to drive to the hotel. And I've had those experiences. That's not the reason why you do this. Is that you're not doing this to make more money, and you're not doing this because of what you want out of it, or your personal gratification, or what you think or believe. It's still service. It's still providing a service. You have to have a purpose. Like, my purpose for why I do how I do what I do, or my why, is to ensure that teaching and learning is standards based, or standards driven, social emotionally supportive, and student responsive, so that the experience is academic and affective for all. That's my purpose. That's why I do how I do what I do. That's the purpose of my company as well. How I do it is I provide professional development on teaching and learning for depth of knowledge. I provide professional development on questioning and inquiry. I write books, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity and honored to have the opportunity to have one publishing company publish my first book, and my new publishing company, Solution Tree. Well, not so much new, because just in my second book with them. To believe in my ideas and my strategies enough to publish a book and invest in it. I do a lot with standards-driven learning. What do? I provide professional development and support to schools and staff, and write books on education. See how I did that? Starting with the why. That's the thing. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I'm seeing a lot of things out there where, hey, do you want to be a speaker? Do you want to get paid for your gigs? Let me teach you how. Okay, I get it. Or join my program, or subscribe to this, and sometimes even make a financial investment. That's scary, Tim. That's scary to me, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be successful at this. This is like, when you become a presenter, a professional development provider, it's like being a musician or an actor. You can be great at your craft, but unless your audience has that interest, unless you get some sort of attraction to what you do, a following, that will determine your success. And sometimes you can be so successful. I mean, I was riding high with the whole rigor movement, and then when social emotional learning came in, all of a sudden, now I'm not being invited, or being included in the conversations. Eric, your academic rigor. We're focused on social emotional learning. So it's not an answer. It's not an escape. It is an opportunity. It's an option, but you really got to think about why you want to do this. And if your motivation is money, or your motivation is fame, or your motivation is success, you're not going to get to that level, and it's going to be short lived, because people will see through you, and they will see that. And I get accused of this. People think, well, I'm a salesman because I promote out there about my books, and even conferences. They say, well, you're trying to present here because you're selling your books. No, I'm sharing ideas. I mean, I'm blessed and fortunate to have this, but you want to buy my book? That's your decision. You want to bring me in? That's your decision. But
Mhm.
being able to share, and here is something I'm going to ask you to rethink about with what I'm sharing. You need to decide whether to reconsider. You need to decide whether you want to invest in me. And if you do, great. If you don't, I'm glad I was able to share some ideas with you, and I hope they work with you.
There was so much there, Eric. I really enjoyed listening to that. And to the book critique, when that comes up, I just think, well, here is a speaker at a conference. Apparently, they have value, they have a message. Their book is their primary resource, or you might have a few books, a few resources. If the thinking is that they bring value as a speaker, then would it not also make sense that there is some value in the book? And so if they're encouraging people, you in this case, or others, or my friend Tom Schimmer, also at Solution Tree, so many others who have entered that space and are sharing value in that form, why does it not make sense that you pick up, for When I think about the price of a conference versus the price of a book, I mean, there's just, I mean, it's hard to critique, but it's funny. I mean, that's a part of the space that you're in, that you do take some shots, and you have to, I would imagine, develop a bit of a thick skin. I want to zoom in on this idea of personal branding, and you talked about marketing a little bit. So it's an essential part. I'm sure you will tell us here in a moment. I mean, from my perspective, I think you have to find ways to get your voice out there, because I'm thinking about that seasoned educator. Maybe they've got great insights in the science classroom or math assessment or some area of education, but will anyone see and hear them in 2024? How have you gone about building your personal brand? I know there's a lot that can be said here, but are there particular platforms or strategies that you look to that have really worked successfully in your case?
I think it's more so establishing not so much not who you are, but what you can do.
Okay.
Okay. It's like that Batman Begins. It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. Okay. And if you focus more on you as this character, okay, that's what a lot of things are happening right now. We're becoming these brand ambassadors, social media characters, and that's part of the reason why I called my company Maverick Education. It's Maverik. So if you go to with Maverick Education, you'll go to India because they have that URL address. But the look at it that way is that what is Maverick Education do not so much do, but why do they do it and how do they do it? And sometimes it's hard because if you brand your name, sometimes you now then become this character or caricature. And I see it, and a lot of people are successful at it. But at the same time, you need to also understand that you got to take off you got to step out of the spotlight. You got to take off the mask. That's the way I look at Maverick Education. Is that Maverick Education is me being Batman or Spider-Man, in which I have a mask that I wear, and that there's a persona that's there. But Erik Francis is more like Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker. And some people say, well, Batman is really Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne's the mask. But that's the hard part. I think people, associate me, and I'm glad I've established myself. I'm very honored actually to establish myself as one of the leading voices of depth of knowledge DOK, um, along with Norman Webb, who created the concept, along with Dr. Karen Hess, Dr. Norman Webb, Dr. Karen Hess, who Karen Hess expanded the concept of cognitive rigor. I'm very honored and grateful for that, and the same with questioning. But why are you how you are where you are? That's the big thing. Like, I see a lot of people out there and it's working for them, where their brand is them. And I am going to document in a pseudo MTV Real World Truman Show every little thing I do. And if that's working for them, great. That may not work for everybody. I can tell you right now, I'm uncomfortable with that. I am really uncomfortable with sharing my personal life, my private life, my private experiences. Sometimes I'll give a glimmer out there. Like, I just did a thing, in my new book, I talk about my father, who was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement for the disabled here in the United States, and one of the framers of the American Disabilities Act. And he was a double amputee, lost his legs in a car accident. Why did I put that out there? And you got to weigh that. Am I putting that out there to share about my father and his greatness, which is what I really had to work through, because I have to be careful that I'm not putting it out there for me and my personal gain. I don't like talking about the story about my father, or the fact that my brothers and sisters are interracial, or the fact that my natural brother has special needs. My brothers and sisters were adopted, or that my daughter has autism. And I just put that out there, not so much to promote myself, but to share the experience with it. And I'll tell you, Tim, a lot of times I feel like I have to do that, to kind of prove like I can be a part of the conversation.
Mm.
Uh, the conversations in equity. Like, that's really funny because I get these things sometimes, like where they say, well, we didn't accept you for this conference because we need to show equity and diversity on the stage. Well, you look at me, blonde hair, blue eyed, Caucasian, um, seemingly able bodied, heterosexual. I don't have that, but you don't see that my story. You don't see my why. You don't see that, if you want to see diversity, equity, inclusion, come over Thanksgiving dinner or Sunday dinner because you'll see a melting pot.
Yeah.
And what's it like to live like that? And I lived like that for my whole life. Do you know what it's like for to go out in public and people stare at your family, stare at you, stare in judgment, stare in confusion, stare hopefully in curiosity. Now I share this story with you to connect with you, and I share this story with you to promote the greatness that my family is, but I have to be careful because I don't wanna share it in a way to say, "Well, I should be a part of the conversations," or, "Well, you should give me that chance." "Well, I know you talk to this person in the guise of diversity, equity, inclusion, and you're judging me based upon what." You gotta be careful about that. You
Mm.
gotta be careful, and you also have to be careful about how you present yourself. Now, I present myself, and you know me, as I'm straightforward and honest. I'll shoot from the hip, I call it like it is, and I don't, I call out the BS when I see it, lack of a better word, but that's why I am how I am, who I am. And some people are like, "Yes, I like that," and some people are like, "Nope, I'm not gonna pay attention, I'm gonna silence him." But I do that kinda like establishing it because I believe that we can all aspire to greatness, but the only way we can be great is to really call out and pull the curtain back and say, "Look, there's an issue here, and I know it's difficult to talk about, and I know it's not easy to point out, but if we really wanna make change and we wanna really grow and evolve as not just educators, but people, we gotta point out the problem so we can come up with a solution or to address it, handle it, resolve it." And that's the branding. I think that's the branding I have with it, that I'm somebody who's very knowledgeable. I'm somebody hopefully that's considered to be very talented and intelligent. But I think also my brand is that, hey, this guy's going to say something, and we're not sure what we're going to say, and we're either going to agree with it or we're going to disagree with it, and how they respond to it, that's on them. And I also have to take that responsibility sometimes because sometimes you risk getting canceled, you risk getting um, pushback, and that can hurt you not only fiscally but also social emotionally.
Mhm. Mhm. Lots of good stuff there. Thank you so much. Many educators, Eric, think twice about leaving the education field because they are terrified to say goodbye to their gold plated pensions. So let's just take for a moment some numbers as an example. Let's say a teacher is in a district that they are contributing 10%, and the district is also matching 10%. That 10% matched is, in a sense, free money, or it's a significant addition of income when it comes to building retirement packages. So, how did you overcome that doubt in your case to say goodbye to the pension? Because as an independent contractor, you're sort of looking out for yourself. Unless I'm missing a piece of the puzzle there, you can fill me in. But how do you think about, or how did you think about that departure? And how do you think about building your own retirement now?
Well, it's great that you asked that because one of the things is, like I said, I didn't dive in head first into doing what I do. I was hesitant. I mean, I worked about 15 years into the system. I had a good pension. I had guaranteed pension. I have, that's a great thing about teaching. We don't get paid now, but it pays off for us in the long run. And my philosophy has always been is that I don't want to be 80 years old and be forced to work to survive, because for a number of reasons, not because I don't want to work, but because, you get to a certain age and you might not be able to work and you might not be able to afford it. Uh, I think the price of your happiness is worth more than the price of the pension.
Mm.
If you are not happy teaching, you got some things to rethink. Um, you know, one of the things, and if you're motivated by money to stop teaching, you may want to rethink that too. I'm going to tell you straight right now. I went into administration because again, my wife and I were both teachers. We both had our masters in education leadership. We both had a discussion who's going to go and become the principal. She wanted to stay in the classroom. She also wanted to be there for our kids as their mother. So we decided I'm going to go. I'll tell you, hindsight 2020, my wife should have been the principal. She would have been
Mm.
a better principal than I ever was because I was not a good administrator. I'll admit that to you on your show right now. I was not ready. I was not provided with the coaching and support that I needed. I had to ask more for forgiveness than permission, and I didn't get the forgiveness. I was often told, "Well, you should have known this." Well, it was my first years as administrator. I mean, I'm not an expert yet. I need to get coached, and that's the value of coaching. Um, if you leave teaching, I would say you leave teaching because you're at a point where just not just feeling fiscally, but social emotionally, you're done. You know, you just can't. I mean, my second daughter was born when I was decided to leave the classroom, and I was just so overwhelmed with grading, and I was like, "I can't be a great father to my kids when I am grading 120 essays over the weekend," because I
Mhm.
want to be also, responsible for my students to get that feedback back. It's funny, I figured out the secret to grading and how to get them higher grades, my last year of teaching. And then after that, when I finally got the time balanced down where I could do it effectively, I left for administration. Um, I regret leaving the classroom. I can go back to the classroom anytime. Unfortunately, one of the things that hold me back is the lack of pay. We're paid horribly as teachers, and we deserve to have higher pay, and we should have higher pay. But again, more money is not always a solution. And
Mhm.
if you're unhappy with your job, you're never ever stuck at your job. You're
Mhm.
never ever stuck. And that's the great thing. We live in it's not like our parents who worked for the same company for 25, 30 years and got the gold Rolex for retirement. Job mobility is something that's inherent in our society. And in fact, our younger generation of millennials and Gen Z is better at that than we are. Um, and I think that's the big thing is this, is that the price of your happiness is worth more than the price of your pension or the price of your paycheck. So if you're unhappy, you really need to rethink why you do how you do what you do. Administration, you really got to want to be an administrator. Yeah, there's more money, but with more money comes more headaches. With more money comes more pressure. The more money you make, the more pressure you have. I mean, you can make a lot of money, but money comes and goes. And the more money you make, you never will ever will have enough money. You never ever will have enough money. But you're also not sentenced to be a teacher. Your skills are valuable in a lot of different places. Companies want teachers because teachers know how to train. Companies want teachers because they know how to manage. Companies want teachers because they know how to lead. You need to basically decide where you want to go, and you're in control of your destiny. You could decide what kind of profession you want to get into, or you could create your own profession. We live in a world where, a world of entrepreneurs where just a stroke of a keyboard and you can become successful, credible. You could publish your own books on Amazon. You don't need to go through the big publishing companies. So ask yourself, you're never ever sentenced, and that's the big thing. The price of your happiness and your health is worth more than the price of your paycheck and your pension. So you need to decide for yourself, are you happy with what you're doing? And if you want to leave, why? And if you do, it's okay because you have the value you have these days is not the many years you have in service. It's the value of your personal skills and gifts and the talents they've been developed into for you.
Well said, and I think you would agree. Don't let those golden handcuffs keep you in a place where you're miserable, right?
I
So,
wish they were gold. If they were gold, then we'd probably make more money as teachers. It's more like I think they're more like tin
Brass.
or bronze, brass,
Yeah.
what's the cheapest metal that's out there, I mean, yeah, maybe even paper, and we just psychologically think that these paper handcuffs are binding on us, or they're pasta noodles that are looped together, keeping us. Nothing is holding you back except you. And that's
Mhm.
free recommendations. You don't have to pay me for training. You don't have to join a service that I'm providing or anything like that. The free recommendation is this: nothing is holding you back from being what you want to be
Mhm.
except for you.
Yeah, well, I'm keeping in mind too, Eric, that there are states and districts, of course, that do pay quite well. So we're also speaking to some educators out there who are well into the six figures, and I mean, still in the classroom sometimes, and who are receiving strong pensions. But as you say, is it really worth it? And I'm not going to try to rephrase everything that you just said because you put it so well, but I think you set up the choice nicely. Thanks so much for joining us on this new podcast for episode 3, investors. If you're finding value here, give this video a like wherever you are tuning in. Erik, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about other forms of investing when it comes to stocks, bonds, real estate, entrepreneurship, venture capital, and cryptocurrency. What in that list catches your attention, and why does it grab your interest right now?
Well, I'll tell you right now, the big thing I look at is entrepreneurship and real estate.
Mm,
I don't trust crypto.
mm,
I anything that goes from physical to electronic, you gotta be careful about. I mean, I don't trust crypto. I don't think crypto is real. And maybe that's me being the laggard or the late majority on it. I don't see it. I see it kind of like credit cards are not real. Okay. Credit card is, I'll pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. And crypto, I kind of feel like that. I don't see it. I don't understand it. I'm also not a risk taker financially. Um, so that's why when I look at that, I look at real estate and entrepreneurship. Real estate, and when it comes to real estate, it's really making sure you have a good financial planner who can get you into safe and secure real estate. The unfortunate thing is my father-in-law, he bought some land in New Jersey. And we buy land and we think like, okay, because now we have land ownership, and someday that land ownership will, appreciate. Well, unfortunately for him, someone discovered some rare snake on that land.
oh
So
no.
now it's a preserve. So now he can't sell the land,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's a very, very contentious thing. It's a very hard thing for him to talk about. And I laugh, not to be cruel, I laugh because it's so ironic. And like I live out here in Arizona, gosh forbid if they discover, a horned a snake or a unicorn snake or some sort of rare thing on the land I invest in. Um, my investments are more, I do what's called REITs,
Yeah.
and they're safe real estate
Yes.
investments. I have investments in a Verizon factory. So that's not going to shut down anytime soon. Or I have investments in a Coca-Cola factory. That's not going to shut down anytime soon. So I'm a safe investor. I'm not a risk taker financially. Now, when it comes to employment, I'm a risk taker. And I think that's a lot of it. It's because not out of being reckless, but more so out of self improvement and growth. But also, when you're entrepreneurial, it's not what's working right now. It's that you got to look at the future. And I think that was one of the great things I learned looking in the future when I worked in the film industry. Like you see all the movies coming out right now. Well, right now, the film industry is making projections 6 months to a year for what's going to be hot. Okay. I'll give you an example. When I worked there, no one wanted to touch pirate movies. Pirate movies were the bane of existence. Okay. But then somebody said, well, let's take this risk and let's look and see and make an investment, make movies called Pirates of the Caribbean. Superhero movies. Look at the genesis of superhero movies. I mean, it started with Superman 1978, then you didn't have any. Then and there's a great documentary on Vice that talks about how the Batman movies came to be. So you had Batman in 1989, and then they thought it was a resurgence of superhero movies, and you started seeing these superhero movies come out. and then it died down in the 90s. And then you had Marvel with Spider-Man, and then you saw a resurgence of that. And then all of a sudden, all these superhero movies came out, and then it died down. And then you had Christopher Nolan come out with Batman Begins, which changed the tone. And then you had Marvel, who decided to do as a business venture to say, okay, we're going to do something that is not really common, which is we're going to make all these separate movies of our characters, but then we're going to put them all together in the Avengers. And that was a huge risk. A lot of people don't realize that like this was a huge risk back then. And what's really interesting is that the model that they were following was actually from the monster movies, the Universal monster movies, when Frankenstein met Wolfman, or Frankenstein met Dracula and Wolfman, or Albert Costello met Frankenstein, or the Godzilla movies, how they used to put all the monsters together. You know, this was kind of an interesting thing. And then that became the model. But then you got Batman versus Superman, and guess what? It didn't work. So it's kind of like in education, we say John Hattie says everything works, but everything doesn't work for anybody everybody. Let's take a film industry attitude is that in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. But if you're committed to it, if you're patient to say, now the audience wants this, that's entrepreneurial. And also entrepreneurialism is not what's out there and how can I be a part of it, but what's not out there and how can I innovate the game. This was a hard thing I had a lot of times with a lot of professional development, aspiring professional development providers, and even people who are authors when SEL became the you know the the PD du jour, because now all of a sudden it's like everyone was in rigor. Now it's like questioning for SEL, understanding by design for SEL, UDL for SEL, and everyone put SEL on it. Or people are like, I want to be do what you do and be professional development. Well, what do you want to provide professional development in? Social emotional learning. Okay, so what makes you different? I compare that to when grunge happened and all the 80s heavy metal stars washed the gunk out of their hair, traded in their leather pants for baggy jeans and flannel, and went from high pitched screams to low pitched growls, and went from pelvic thrusts to just rocking back and forth. You gotta be an innovator, okay? That's the big thing, and that's what it means to be entrepreneurial. What I mean by that, it doesn't mean that you have to create it from scratch. It's looking at saying, "What's out there? What's not being said? And how can I innovate it, or how can I take the next step?" Look, I didn't create depth of knowledge. Norman Webb created DOK, all right? But Norman Webb created it as a criterion for alignment study. Karen Hess innovated it by making it a measure of cognitive rigor. I innovated it by making it a method, a model for teaching and learning. See what I'm doing there? Um, Good questions. I didn't come up with as reason why I came up with good questions is because everyone kept on being confused about what's an essential question. There's a lot of things out there right now that educators have the answers to and can become entrepreneurial with it. You know, differentiating instruction. There's this conception of what differentiating instruction is. But if you're doing it successfully in your classroom in a in an innovative and unique way, you can become entrepreneurial. How you become entrepreneurial is you start presenting at conferences, you start doing blogs, you start getting on shows like yours. That will don't think like don't start big to think that you got to be big. Start small. I started out presenting at professional development conferences. You know, when my job, I was lucky to be a presenter and present on training, and then I started applying to conferences, and luckily, someone saw me at an ASCD conference, and I had 3 publishers come up to me and say, "Hey, did you ever think about writing a book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but not on education." You know, I was gonna write comic books, I was gonna write novels or screenplays. So, they saw that, and then people will see you presenting and be on shows like yours. And don't do it. Entrepreneurial is not about being successful, and it's not about making a lot of money. It's about changing the game. The successful entrepreneurs change the game. They change the system. They innovate the system, but they do it not for personal gain and reward. They do it purposefully to make things better, make a system better, make people better. That's kind of basically being your, your great showing grace with that. You can show gratitude by being grateful for everything, but show grace by saying, okay, I'm doing this not for me. I'm doing this to hopefully make you better. And that's something, that's the most successful entrepreneurs. The most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who are giving, not gaining. And you can see the difference of who they are, because those ones who are basically self-serving and about me, 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 and you can see right through them, their shelf life is short-lived. I'm blessed to have done this for 12 years. I should not have had that, because basically most businesses and most startups and most, self-employed people, they do not last beyond 3 years. Because why? Because they lose their why, or they lose their purpose, or they lose their reasoning. I think what the success I've had with entrepreneurialism is that, number one, I'm always looking to the future. It's not what people need right now, but it's what people are going to need. That's why I write my books the way I do, or the PD I provide. That's why I love the pandemic, because I was like, good, now I got time to think about what is this going to look like once it's over. Okay, not what people need right now, but what's going to happen once it's over. Okay. The other thing is, I don't do what I do for me. Once upon a time, I probably did, and it was unhealthy, and it was not effective. Now I'm more purposeful. Now I'm more service oriented. Now I'm more, what can I do? Now I'm like, my company's called Maverick Education. It should be called Maguire Education, because it's like, help me help you. I don't want to be the face anymore. I want to be Jerry Maguire in the background. You are the star. And it's interesting, because that's what I'm actually talking to leaders about, is that it's not me coming in training your teachers on how to do something. The leaders are the ones who need to step to basically take the initiative, take the charge, and lead the implementation. They have to talk what I trained on when I'm not there. So that's why I'm focusing on training the leaders. But again, that's that shift, that's that innovation. Because more often than not, people are going to call me and say, hey, why don't you come for a one and done and 6 hours? I want you to train all my teachers on depth of knowledge of question and inquiry. Well, if I can get them all to be masters in 6 hours, then I'm better at than I think I am at what I do, because you can't. But if I train the leaders, create that sustainability model, do a train the trainer of that, that is entrepreneurial, because no one's really doing that, or people are doing it, but they're not doing it widespread. And I think I just gave away the secret of how we're going to survive when the money is being cut next year, because there's no more ESSER funds. We're not going to be able to charge $10,000, $20,000 for a 1 hour keynote. Okay. And I don't do that, but you gotta be understanding, you gotta show grace. How can you provide professional development that is sustainable and affordable, but also service oriented? And that is that's how you get that entrepreneurial investment. It's not how much money can I make, but how can I sustain what I do so I do have a living.
A lot of good stuff there as well. Thank you, Eric. And so I heard entrepreneurship and real estate. We might come back to real estate in a moment, but I just want to confirm you're not into property rentals. Is that right? Just the REITs and the other.
Just the REITs. At some
Yeah,
point, I
yeah.
may, but and at some point, and when you talk about property rentals, I'm presuming you're saying setting up your Airbnbs and VRBOs, right?
Well, those would be the short term. I'm more interested in the long term, like landlording, let's say. I think there's a lot to be said about that route as well. But yeah, is that something that you've looked into?
No, but now you made me rethink, which is awesome, because, when I look at it, and also I have to understand my skill set. I think if you are handy and you are really great at fixing things, that I think a landlord would be a great opportunity. If you like to design, if you like to decorate, if you're into home decoration, or you're into like remodeling homes, like the big things that DIY shows like right now, Airbnbs and VRBOs are really a great way to do this, or flipping houses. I know that's not the real estate market. I know it kind of fluctuates with that, especially with sales. Um, I would look more at some point doing Airbnb and VRBO. Uh, we've had some opportunities out here to possibly do that because, Phoenix is a vacation destination and a luxury destination. Sometimes we host sporting events like the Super Bowl or the NCAA, or we have a World Series when our team's good enough. But um, I'm also kind of cautious about that because I've seen and heard too many horror stories about people trashing the VRBOs. That's a trust, but no, I think that that's the other thing is that, and I think also, in terms of investing, it's not so much reward back, but reward for the future. My daughter, who's going away to college in Flagstaff, probably at some point I'm going to end up buying a condo, or I'm going to end up buying, or getting some sort of home up there that she can live in. But when she's done with college, then it becomes a place I can go to, or I can flip it and sell it um, once she's done with that. So, but no, landlording, I never really thought about that. Probably because I'm not a handyman, even though I have a Thor hammer um, that's a toolbox. You know, I'm not handy enough, I think, to be a landlord, and I think that's a very, very time consuming thing. I think it takes a really special set of skills and talents to do that. But thanks for opening my eyes and think about something.
Hey, that's what the show is for. I can tell you that. Well, I have to think through how much I share on this show, but I can tell you that my wife and I have one tenant who continues to pay rent. We love and appreciate her. She has not lived in the suite in 4 years, continues to pay rent month after month. So I will tell you, as someone who is not a handyman, there sometimes you happen upon some arrangements that work quite well without much hassle.
The dangerous thing about landlording now is squatters' rights. You
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, and that's another thing, I
Oh,
get scared of is, you hear these horror stories.
from New York, right?
Well, not just in New York, but just like throughout here in the States. I'm not sure, because I know you're up in Canada. I'm not sure if that's something, but a lot of things in terms of squatters' rights, or even people, like, for example, like, let's say someone lives in your house, you rent out your room, and they are so disruptive, and you're like, I want them out, but there's laws that say, well, they get mail there, they have ownership, you can't get them out so easily.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the dangerous thing about that. So you really got, like I said, special set of skills and talents, and you're lucky, with that. And it's funny because you also have to watch out for that because my mother back in the 80s, she lived in a rent controlled apartment, and it was actually considered to be low income housing, and it was in Tribeca, which during the 80s and 90s became like a very, very, very attractive place to live. And she kept that apartment, and then they cracked down on her, and they booted her out. You can't have that apartment anymore. That's a whole different thing, and I would have to probably get educated more on how to do stuff like that, and also understand the legal safeguards before I ever made a fiscal or personal investment in that.
Fair enough. Let's talk about crypto now. I put out the list of investing classes. You had a nice little rant there on crypto. I enjoyed that, but I do have a question here for you about where you see it going. And we understand you're not a crypto expert. You said that, but what does your gut tell you? Again, this is not financial advice, but what does your gut tell you about the future of crypto?
I don't trust it.
Yeah.
I
So
don't.
do you see it just going away and dying in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see it either evolving or I
Hmm.
see it crashing.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, I kind of look at that like the Great Depression, that basically, a lot of people lost money in the Great Depression because we invested in the banks and we invested in stocks. And that's another thing why I'm kind of leery about stocks. I'm more of a very conservative when it comes to stocks, and bonds. The best thing I would say is, and this is what helped me get out of debt, why did the robber barons and why did the legendary families of the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers never lose their money, even during the Depression? It's because they lived like they didn't have money. Now, that doesn't mean that they were cheap and miserly. Some of them were, but the difference is, do I need it or do I want it? And if I want it, can I afford it? So it's not living above your means. And it's also making sure that you have liquidable cash. It's kind of, I'm not saying put your money under the mattress and hide it, but you got to be careful. I mean, I am just leery about stuff that I can't really, you know, physically put my hand on it. I can't, it's kind of like going to Vegas. You put, your money down on the table. And the minute you put the money down your table, well, it's not money anymore. Now it is a gambling contribution. It's not your money. If you're lucky, you'll get the money back and maybe you'll get more money. And if you're not lucky, you can't go, well, wait a minute, I want my money back. No, you're gambling away. That's the big thing about stocks, bonds, and even crypto. It's gambling, and the best gamblers know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run, to quote Kenny Rogers. You know, I don't know enough about crypto. I don't know enough about crypto to criticize it. And that's the thing. And I don't want to mock what I don't understand. Um, but I'm cautious. There's nothing there that makes me say, "I gotta get involved in that." Maybe it's because I became an adult in the '90s when pyramid schemes
Right.
were the thing. We had a guy out here in Ahwatukee who used to do a late night infomercial, so he was like a house painter, and then he started putting ads in the classified, and when he started putting ads in the classified, he was making hundreds and hundreds and millions and thousands of dollars, and I can show you how to do that. Or, you meet somebody. I can't tell you how many times I met somebody and said, "Hey, did you ever think about this?" And I meet them someplace, and I think it's a job interview, and they're trying to put me in some pyramid scheme. And I kept on saying, "Well, when does the product get to the customer?" Um, I just I don't trust it. I like paper money. I use credit a lot, I use debit a lot, but I don't think I trust it enough, and I'm not enough of a fiscal risk taker to invest in it. If you can, and if you understand it, please reach out to me, Eric at maverickeducation.com. Teach me about crypto. Don't spam me, but, I would love to learn more. But right now, I don't know. To me, it just seems like funny money, and we live too we're in too much of times where unfortunately things are so turbulent and nothing is constant or traditional as it has been in the past, that I don't know if I'd make that investment. But that's just me.
One book I would recommend is called Number Go Up. And Number Go Up. I read it earlier this year, and wow, did it ever make me a skeptic in the crypto space? So you can check that out and make of it what you will. I know my last guest is much more positive on the crypto space, and that's a whole other conversation. But I tend to be like you, Eric. I tend to regard most of the space as pretty much speculative and not based on a whole lot that has functional value. I think one telling sign, how even the crypto bros, how do you know they're getting really excited about the particular crypto token or coin? Well, they're telling you the value of it in US dollars. So that tells you something right there, right? What is your strategy, Eric, in the stock market? You said you're pretty conservative when it comes to stocks and bonds. Does that mean you're not investing there at all right now?
I do have investments for retirement. I
Mm,
do have a
yeah,
portfolio. Most of my stuff is pretty conservative.
sure,
Not to delve deep into it, just 'cause, being private and stuff like
sure,
that. But I
sure.
do conservative investment, and
Yeah.
if people want to know what conservative investments are, I'm sure a lot of people know what I mean by that. Um, one of the things, and my financial planner, and I have a great financial planner, and that's what you need to do. His name's Tom Benscotter. He's out here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Um, he really has helped me fiscally over the last, for the most duration of my business. I got with him about, I think, the second year I had my business, and he's made some great investments, not only for me, but also for my mom. What I would advise about stocks is that know the industry that you wanna play with, okay? Like, I'm very knowledgeable about the film industry. Uh, I look at the movies that are coming out, I look at, what's the projections on it, but The problem is, and again, to quote William Goldman in his book Adventures of Screen Trade, in Hollywood, no one knows anything. You know, if you were to tell us that back in 1990, that during a summer when the big movies were Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Die Hard 2 with uh, Bruce Willis, that the biggest movie that summer was going to be Ghost with, you know, Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg, it's too unpredictable. I've talked to him. I said, you know, should I start investing in Disney? You know, should I start investing in Warner Brothers just based on what's coming out? And he always advises me not. And you also got to be careful because again, we live in a turbulent world where there's nothing really constant and traditional except death and taxes. And the thing is this, like, think about how many people are losing their shirts on Peloton. I mean, during the pandemic, the stock of Peloton shot through the roof. I mean, it was a great investment. Everyone got involved. Now, Peloton is swinging downwards, and Peloton is trying to figure out who they are and why they are. And slowly they're starting to realize that Peloton, the investment in Peloton and the setup of Peloton is not in buying the bike or the equipment, it's the app. But again, they're a little bit tough, you know, in terms of letting go because the way we've always been done is that we've sold this bike and we've sold this rowing machine and we've sold this treadmill. But really, the investment and the worth of Peloton is the app, you know. So that's why again, playing the stock market, you really gotta understand the industry that you're playing in. Like again, I'm very well versed in the film industry, but I don't or the entertainment industry, but I don't want to invest because it's too turbulent. I don't think it's a good investment right now because I think the movies industry are still trying to bounce back from the pandemic. They're still trying to figure out the relationship between theatrical release and streaming, and you know, especially even the music industry. I mean, the music industry, they still live and die by the concept of the album, where they are not taking Apple iTunes or taking streaming to the level that it could be. And I think it's too mercurial right now to do investment. But again, I really think you need to know your industry that you're investing and don't just look at, like you just showed the chart up there, the stock market or the Dow Jones. Don't look at, you know, what's hot, because what's hot today is gonna not be hot tomorrow. We live in too much of an ever-changing, turbulent world. That's something constant, and you really gotta know your industry. And again, you gotta know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, and when to run.
Yeah, Peloton, thanks for putting that on my radar. I've never purchased Peloton. I do buy some single stocks, but have not gone there, and it's lost half its value this year. So that is quite a ride. Depending on your outlook for the platform, maybe this is the time to buy, but I think those are some good warnings. Erik, what's been the single most positive investment move you've ever made? Is that the move you made, the investment in yourself, or is there a material investment that you think about?
I would say the best investment I made was my commitment to get out of debt. Again, my family and I were six figures in debt, before our cars and our homes, with our cars and before our homes, just from living as two teachers in education. Where, you know, you talked about the six figure teacher, you know, it's great to be a six figure teacher, but where are you living? I mean, I can be a six figure teacher and live in Manhattan and still get an apartment that's barely one bedroom. You know, it's the cost of living. Um, the best investment I made was to get myself out of debt. And one of the things that I the best lesson I learned was from, Dave Ramsey. And one of the best things Dave Ramsey said is that if you have debt, you should not have savings, okay? Because you may have savings, but you're still carrying debt. When I started doing what I was doing, one of the reasons why I started doing what I was doing was to get us out of debt. But I had to burn the candle at both ends. I had to work a day job, an anchor job, and consult on the side. How I got us out of debt was, I had a day job and I consulted on the side, and my day job paid for, you know, my daily living expenses and my bills. But my consulting on the side, I threw into a savings account and got some interest on it and acted like it's not there. So what happened is I set an amount that I wanted to get to, and once I got to that amount, I started paying off the debt. So what I did was I looked at what's good debt and what's bad debt. Your student loans is good debt. And now we're living in a time where student loans can be forgiven. Oh my gosh, I wish back in the day that I had this opportunity. Or you can get your student loan forgiven here in the States if you're working at a Title I school that serves low socioeconomic students, and you do that for a certain time. That wasn't possible. And even when it became possible, and I was working there, they're like, "Oh, you graduated too early to be a part of this." Okay, so what I did was the best investment I did was I chipped away at our debt. So, and I chipped away at it systematically and smartly. So what I mean by that is this, is that I paid off the credit card that had the highest interest. And so that brought some money back. And then you think you have money, but you don't. Because now what you're going to do is you learned how to live with that debt and how to make those payments. So now you're going to pay above
Nice.
the limit, the least amount you have to pay for your next credit card. So now you're paying off, your monthly, bill, but also you're paying above the monthly bill. So you're whittling down that. Then you get to a certain amount of money and you say, okay, now I'm going to pay that off. So then what ends up happening is every time you pay off a card, you take the money that you paid for that card, for that debt, and you apply it to the next thing you have in debt. So we had a couple of credit cards. We took the biggest interest, paid that off. Took the monthly payment on that, paid it towards the other card, which was above the monthly payment on that, paid that off. Okay. I'm working consulting. I got this money I act like doesn't exist. I get to a certain amount. I'm ready to pay that off. In 1 year, I think it took me about a year, I paid off over $100,000 in debt by just doing that. I have well, I mean, I it's dedication, and Dave Ramsey helped me a lot with that idea of you have debt, you should not have savings because your savings is not real, but your debt hangs over you like unreal money. Now, you get out of debt and you may have money, but that doesn't mean I got money to burn. You got to think wisely about why you want what you want. Do you deserve the best? Yes. But are you living above your means? Okay. And that's one thing that helped me during the pandemic, Tim, because everybody got torpedoed and everybody lost money. I have to live like my phone stops ringing for 6 to 8 months, either because a pandemic hits or something happens that all of a sudden I'm not in vogue or something gets, whatever and affects my business. I have to live to make sure that I can live 6 to 8 months if no money's coming in because I don't have a weekly paycheck. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I had maybe 2 paying gigs this quarter, which is understandable because everybody's testing and nobody wants professional development, but I have enough of a nest egg to keep me through to the summer where the PD starts up. Again, that's smart money management. You also have to think about the investment you make not based upon want, but based upon need. So I'll give you an example. My daughter started driving here in the States and probably up where you are in Canada, there weren't a lot of inventory for cars. And used cars, there was not a lot of inventory for it. And the new cars, they were sitting on barges and couldn't get in. But my daughter needed a car. I had this car that was a good car. It's a Toyota RAV4, it was 2017, low mileage, but I need a car. So now what do I do? Well, what do I want? I want a car that I think I would like. Okay.
Mhm.
Did I have, kind of like the thing like, oh, I'd love to buy this kind of car, this kind of car. So then I'm looking at, I'm not going to tell you the kind of car I got. I can tell you it's not a Beamer, it's not a Mercedes or anything like that. But I looked at what was the need. So I'm going to give you the hint about this is that gas prices were going up here in Arizona. And part of my business when I worked in here in Arizona, I don't really charge as much as I do when I go out of the states because other states or out of the country because, the travel and lodging is much less. But what I was finding was that I was spending more on the travel and lodging because of the gas prices, because of the hotels at the time, that I'm like, "Okay, I need more of an affordable car." So, what'd I get? I got an electric car, okay? Did it cost some money? Yeah. But did I want an electric car? No. Did I want an electric car for status? No. Did I need an electric car? Absolutely. Because the gas prices were that. Now, people are like, "Ooh, you got that electric car." And I'm like, great. It was really funny because I don't know if you and I are connected on social media, but I don't know if you notice, I never ever say, wow, look at what I have or where I am, or look at the sneakers I bought, or look at the clothes I have, or look at, and, I don't, because that's very insensitive, and I think it's very insensitive to educators who have to work 2 or 3 jobs to actually afford that kinda stuff. And it was funny because, Shimmer, who, we talked about how he's a mutual friend. So Tom Shimmer, I picked up one time, here at the PLC Summit. I picked him up. He goes, "When'd you get this car?" And I said, "I had it." And he goes, "I didn't see you post it on social media." And I go, "And I'm not going to, because that's that sensitivity of it." But I had to get out of debt, and yeah, my money, and I tell my wife and kids this all the time, like, "Dad, you got money in the bank." Yeah, but it's not real, because gosh forbid if a pandemic hits again, I'm okay for 8 months. That's when I think you maybe saw me on social media. I'm like, "God, jeez, enough, because I'm losing money," and I even got scared of how much. I mean, never got down below a certain amount, but still, it's like, when is this gonna stop? And that's the thing. So I would say, probably, again, the most positive investment was getting myself out of debt. If I can give anyone a suggestion out there, if you have debt, pay off your debt. If you have a credit card, don't play the game of transferring from Peter to Paul because it's a low interest rate, because you're just gonna accrue more debt. Pay off your debt. And there's ways to pay off your debt, and there's ways to work, if you have to, unfortunately, more than one job. Like, I consulted on the side with, an anchor job. There's a lot of things we can do online. There's a lot of things we can do service online. You're a teacher. You have a wealth of expertise. Set up a thing where you can provide virtual online coaching. I
Mhm.
have a thing, actually, what I do, Tim, is because some schools, they may not want to bring me in for whatever reason, or they can't bring me in for whatever reason, but there are teachers who want to work with me. So I offer a consulting fee where they can schedule a time with me, and it's less, it's like about the same amount of money as going out to dinner, or going to the movies with dinner. And sometimes when I have the relationship with them, it's like, okay, you know what? We didn't have a relationship. You paid your thing. Now you just contact me when you can. And that's a way you can set it up. Can you set yourself up as someone who is a specialist in science of reading? You know all about science of reading? Virtual consultation. Put it out there. I've been a teacher for this amount. Here's my credentials. Here's my expertise. Help me help you. $50, $100 for an hour consultation. Maybe start off lower, 30 for a half hour, 60 for an hour. Do it like the way kind of therapists do, because how much do they charge? The insurance gets back from them, and then build your base.
So good. And I have to add, your commendation of Dave Ramsey and his debt snowball. Educators and listeners, people in other fields, this podcast isn't just for educators, although that is our background for me and my guest today. if you are in serious debt, particularly credit card and high interest debt, you've got to get out of it. There's no investment that's going to be worth more than that, or very few that you can guarantee. You're much better off just paying off that 19% credit card. Absolutely. And by the way, Erik, I sure hope the EV is a Tesla. I am I'm happy to disclose to teachers, made the move as a teacher 4 years ago. And boy, do I love that car. It has changed my commute. Thank you for tuning into the audio only version of this show. Podcast listeners, consider adding the Investing Teacher podcast to your commute. Erik, I've taken so much of your time this morning, so we're going to actually start to bring this to a close, unless there are any other topics that you're dying to get into. I think you've shared so much value here today. For those interested, as we put a bow on this, I know this is not the primary focus of your work, although, again, we're going to name drop Tom Schimmer because he is starting to carve out a niche. I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's starting to carve out a bit of a niche in terms of helping other educators and professionals take that step into independent contracting. But for those who are interested in your story and in your journey and might want to reach out and say, hey, I'd like to get into consulting, how would you advise me in my particular space? What are the best ways for the listeners to connect with you?
Well, you can email me at Erik, Erik, at Maverick, Maverik, education.com. I'm glad you're asking that because one of the things I think, when you talk about branding and pride of yourself, one of the things a lot of people will say, hopefully about me, and what I strive is that I'm responsive to people when they reach out. Lately, a lot of people have been kind of reaching out. And we're friends on social media, so I don't know if you saw that. I made a comment to say, in this work that I do, and in this work that we do with professional development, and everything, you never tell anyone you're too busy. You never tell anyone you don't have time. You never tell anyone you don't have the bandwidth. What that is such an arrogant thing. You know, I invite and encourage anyone to reach out to me and have that conversation with me, about how you could do this. Now I'm gonna have an honest conversation with you. I'm gonna ask you, why do you wanna do this? And if I hear things that's like more about, well, it's what I want or what's I think, I'll counsel you to say, or coach you to say, you may want to rethink that. So I'm going to invite people to do that. If you want any kind of it, now I'm going to make suggestions. You make decisions. I'm not at that point. I think to like do. I think what Tom's doing is really great and interesting. Again, looking forward to learning and hearing more. I'm seeing what he's doing out there. In fact, I've always had a dream to like set up like a thing where I can train people and mentor people to write books, professional development. And it's kind of like, like the developmental, like, I'll use an analogy. It's the the World Wrestling Entertainment has a thing called NXT, which is how you go to school, you learn how to be a professional wrestler, and then they put you in the ring, and then they see how people take to you, and then you get called up. But again, there's no guarantee that you're going to go and become the next Hulk Hogan, Dwayne Johnson, or John Cena. It all depends upon it. But what I like to do is just say, if people want to contact me, they can go to Erik, email me at Erik, Erik, at Maverick, Maverik, education.com. You can go to my website, and schedule a meeting with me, maverickeducation.com, against no C. Twitter, I'm Maverick, Maverik, edu12. And yeah, just reach out. I mean, the worst thing I'm going to say to you is, you might want to rethink that. And I know, I think your next question to me was probably going to be what books I'm going to recommend. So I'll let you ask that, and then I'll talk about that in a second.
Well, actually, I'm sort of wrapping this completely up, Erik. So go ahead and share that book that you've lined up.
I strongly recommend everybody, whether you're an educator or not, to read Think Again by Adam Grant. Um, Funny story about it is that I read the wrong Adam Grant book everyone was talking about. Everyone in our profession was talking about hidden potential. And it's funny because I saw Sean Galliard, who's a friend of mine. post about hidden potential. And I said, I just finished Think Again. I keep on listening, hearing it, and it really has changed my philosophy. And then he goes, yeah, I'm reading Hidden Potential. And I go, well, wait a minute. Wasn't Think Again the book that you recommended? He goes, no, I recommended Hidden Potential. I'm like, so I read the wrong Adam Grant book, but I'm so glad I did because it has really taught me how to be more open and flexible and really taught me from a business standpoint because one of the things, I don't know if you've read the book, but one of the things is that when we have knowledge and our knowledge is challenged, we talk about come in three modes, which is the preacher, which we sermonize and we'll shout louder so people can hear us. The prosecutor, where we become so focused on, proving other people wrong. And the politician who says, okay, I know this is uncomfortable. How can I do this so you like me? For the last number of years with DOK, I've been the preacher and the prosecutor, and I cannot be the politician. But with Adam Grant, what he talks about is you need to think like a scientist. And that thing about being a scientist is that the question I ask is, you're right, but why? And you are right, and you may be wrong or you may be right, to quote Billy Joel. And also to say, you're right, but are you still right? And that has really helped me a lot, not only professionally, but personally. So like you've heard my conversation about DOK and how it's inaccurate. Excuse me, and that has really turned a lot of people off at times because I come in like, oh, who's this know-it-all? Because I'm preaching and I'm prosecuting because I can show you the evidence. But here I say is there's new data and information. One of it's my book. Norman Webb wrote this article. Don't use the DOK wheel. I'm going to ask you to rethink. You need to decide to reconsider. And in fact, I'm taking that thought process into my next book because I'm writing my next book right now, where I'm going to say this book is asking you to rethink in light of the new data and information and the changing circumstances and conditions I'm presenting to you. You need to decide to reconsider why you do, how you do, what you do. So again, I recommend highly Adam Grant's Think Again, and I also recommend the Simon Sinek books, Start with Why and Find Your Why, because especially if you want to be an entrepreneur, especially if you want to go into business, your why is why you do what you do. It's not what you want to be. It's not how you're going to do it. It's why you do it. From your why, you will get your how, and from your how, that will establish your what. So that's basically the two books. Adam Grant, Think Again, and Simon Sinek's books, Start with Why and Find Your Why. That series.
Great thinkers and great ideas to end on. Thank you so much, Erik. I really appreciate you sharing your time with the podcast today. It's been fun and interesting to learn from you and to explore a little bit more of the financial side behind the education curtain. Investors, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed the content you heard today from Erik Francis, make sure to connect with him on LinkedIn and all the other platforms that he just mentioned, including his website. In the meantime, keep investing, and I'll meet you next week right here on the Investing Teachers Podcast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.